This is Duke University.
Global trade and environmental justice.
Human rights issues are still.
The term Ubuntu.
The Alien and Sedition Act
is making inferential discovery.
The importance of an archive.
The John Hope Franklin Center.
I recently read the sort of official Cirque du Soleil history, I was telling Patrick, which presents this sort of narrative which Patrick was discussing, and then it presents each one of the shows, and it talks about, you know, the narrative and the themes and the leitmotifs. And I'm thinking, well, I've only seen one Cirque show. I've watched a number of DVDs, and wow, that just went right over my head. I didn't catch any narrative. I didn't see any themes. So and you know, the ethos that you're talking about, I'm wondering to what extent the Las Vegas theater goer sitting in the theater is conscious at any level of a theme of all of this ethos that you're talking about. I mean, obviously in Quebec, he's a superstar, and he gives press conferences, and people understand that, and people like you study it. But does the average person who just goes to a show, I'm just looking at contortionists and high wire acts and you know, the bells and whistles, all right, the costumes, the masks.
Yeah.
Is there any, do you get any sense that this actually filters down, that the spectators are absorbing this?
Right. I probably shouldn't take that to give
Oh, I'm
feedback.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Critics have been pretty harsh on Cirque because of that, especially coming from the university. You know, where we look for narrative, we look for sense. However, I think each show does have its narrative imprint. Absolutely. They're not. They don't follow Aristotelian sort of dramaturgical standard narratives. They don't tell a story in the same way we do in theater or novels. It's more paradoxical, so juxtapositions of contrary images. They tend to, as I mentioned early in the talk, they structure the show from their, well, they used to, from their aerial acts. So you'll have one show up here, one act up here, then you'll have the clowns come down. So they're sort of going back and forth, up, down, and playing off the verticality and the horizontality. I do think that Franco Dragon's contribution, and he directed most of their shows, like really from, except for a few, but from the 80s to O and La Nuba. La Nuba is their permanent show in Orlando at Disney World. I do think that Franco Dragon brought in a lot of theater language, but it's sort of an instinctive way of telling stories. My discussions with various circus people have been frustrating because I'm working on circus dramaturgy, and I'm working with the National Circus School in Montreal. So starting next year, we have a project focusing on that, and basically we're trying to see how can you tell stories through circus without making it boring, because the audience, quite frankly, doesn't necessarily want to go see a story. They don't necessarily want plot or subplot. They want to be dazzled. I had never heard audience members, as I did with O in Las Vegas, say things like, "Oh my God, that was so exciting, I almost peed my pants." I just thought, wow, I've never heard that at the theater. It was like, so there's something, yeah, we're looking at spectators for that excitement, for that thrill, to be dazzled, essentially. But at one point, and some would argue that Cirque sort of, through technical excellence, because they are absolutely technically incredible. They're just pristine acts. In Europe, I'm thinking especially of some of the small French companies and of upstarts, some of the smaller companies in Quebec, such as Les Sept Doigts de la Main, Seven Fingers. Seven Fingers have a show now in New York, Traces, which has been going on for a year, or will have been a year soon. And what their aesthetic is, basically they grew out of Cirque du Soleil. 7 performers who had been in Cirque shows said, "We're sick of being a brand. We're sick of being anonymous behind the Cirque du Soleil brand. I don't know if you saw the Oscars, the Cirque du Soleil number. There was, they're doing basic Chinese circus tumbling and stuff. Excerpts of their Irish show from Los Angeles as well. And at the very end, you had the Cirque du Soleil logo. No one had their logo on stage during the Oscars except Cirque. So the performers of Les Sept Doigts de la Main in 2001 felt that they were being branded. And they did not want to be part of that. They didn't want to be part of something corporate. They wanted to exist as individuals. And so the Sept Doigts de la Main, Seven Fingers shows are all based on staging the individual, which paradoxically is the ethos of Cirque du Soleil, though they're selling something else. So you have this sort of counter-cirque movement or artistic impulse happening now in Montreal and very much in Europe of shows basically showing performers fall, stumble, playing on not the dazzlement, but playing on their profound humanity. Patinoire, the last show I saw from Seven Fingers, has Patrick Lerou as a sort of, imagine George Costanza from Seinfeld as a circus performer. You're just sitting there like horrified. No, don't do that, please. And yet he runs, falls back, hurts himself, and he just keeps on doing it and doing it and doing it, and it hurts you. But at the same time, you think, wow, okay, Quebec circus has moved a long way from a sort of polished corporate, vague narrative, but not quite aesthetic, to multiple ways of doing theater and of thinking about circus and theater and dance. I'll be working with a juggler next year. I won't juggle, but he's going to juggle, and this is my research creation work. And basically, we're going to integrate multimedia and see how the juggling can expand, and how you can basically sort of transcend this initial physical juggling and sort of taunt the audience and unsettle the audience with that as well. So there's interesting stuff happening, I'd say. Yeah.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.